and decided to become violent with his shit. That's what they're saying. So I guess they're thinking the rest of you Negroes out there listening have the propensity to turn into the next Micah Johnson. This thing goes on to say, during the standoff with police, Johnson told police negotiators he was upset about recent police shootings and white people and expressed a desire to kill white people, especially white officers. Johnson searched and liked social media pages of BIE and black separatist groups and had been ousted from a local BIE group for being too radical, according to open source news articles. So he was all over Facebook and Twitter just liking all the pro-black shit. And they're trying to say him liking that and reading that was enough to get him all riled up to go out there and start shooting cops. On October 23rd, 2014, Zell H. Thompson attacked 4 white New York Police Department officers in Queens with a hatchet. One officer received injuries to the arm and a second officer received an injury to the side of his head. The 2 remaining NYPD officers at the scene shot and killed Thompson, according to open source reporting. According to open source reporting, Thompson was angered after a recent spate of deaths at the hands of the police. In his own writings, Thompson advocated for armed struggle against the oppressors and mass revolt against the U.S. social, economic, and political systems, which he perceived to be white dominated. He also described the United States as a beast and called for chopping off his head, hands, and feet. NYPD observed tattoos on Thompson's body that indicated that he was affiliated with a black separatist extremist group, and pocket litter indicating he may have been associated with another black separatist group, according to law enforcement reportings. What fucking groups are they talking about? These people are just making up shit right now. Then it goes on to say, convergence of BIE and Moorish sovereign citizen ideology very likely leads to violence against law enforcement officers. Okay. The FBI assesses it is very likely a few of the BIEs who have targeted law enforcement since 2014 were influenced by more than one ideological perspective. The FBI judges it is very likely in 4 of the 6 BIE attacks against law enforcement since 2014. The perpetrators were motivated by a mix of BIE ideology and Moorish sovereign citizen extremist ideology, a category of SCE ideology. The FBI assesses it is very likely BIE adoption of a Moorish SCE identity reinforced a sense of disenfranchisement from society and a perception that the criminal justice system is unjust. So pretty much they're going in on people who identify as Moorish, trying to say that you niggas are about to start acting real violent and y'all need to be watched too. Goes on to say on October 4th and October 13th of 2016, an individual allegedly shot at 2 different police stations in Indianapolis, Indiana. The subject left a handwritten note at the scene of one of the shootings in which he identified himself as a Moor and made anti-white statements. The subject posted pictures on social media of African-American men carrying assault rifles behind texts calling for social injustice and retribution. The subject was later involved in a shootout with police during his arrest on related charges, according to law enforcement reporting. You notice how they do not name this subject. They name everybody else in every other damn report, but they won't name who this mystery subject is that allegedly, that's what they said now, allegedly shot at 2 different police stations and supposedly left a handwritten note at one of the shootings labeling himself as a Moor and making anti-white statements. For all we know, this could be some redneck hillbilly white dude perpetrating a fraud. You know, they already do that shit now. There was a report on Facebook on the news of some Facebook group that was actually ran by a bunch of Russians pretending to be black. And these jokers had like 500,000 followers on Facebook. So who is this mystery person? Why don't y'all drop his name? Because as we move on to the next paragraph, they drop names again. It says on July 17th of 2016, Gavin Eugene Long. So we got his name. We got Micah Johnson's name. We got Zell H. Thompson's name. But who is this guy up in Indianapolis? Who is this mystery person? Anyways, Gavin Eugene Long ambushed and shot 6 law enforcement officers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, before eventually being killed by police. The deceased victims included 1 African-American officer and 1 white officer from the Baton Rouge Police Department and 1 white officer from the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office. Long had expressed black separatist rhetoric both on social media and in his manifesto, including rants against crackers. And in reference to an African-American male killed by police in Baton Rouge on July 5th, 2016. They're talking about Alton Sterling right there. In his manifesto, Long expressed his frustrations with the police and criminal justice system in the United States, saw his actions as a necessary evil in order to create substantial change. A law enforcement search of Long's laptop contained biographical information and residential addresses of 2 officers involved in the Alton Sterling shooting, and Google search directions to one of the officers' home addresses. Long had also declared himself to be a Moor and had changed his slave name to a Moorish name named Cosmo Asur Setepinra. I believe that's how you say that, and was carrying a Moorish identification card at the time of his death, according to open source reporting. So once again, they're on social media watching you niggas. But it's crazy because how many, there's like what, 40 something million black people in America? and God knows how many of these black people talk anti-cop talk on Facebook. So I guess they're about to just start using that as a tactic for just watching you niggas. Kind of like how they started watching all the Muslims after 9/11. So don't be surprised if some of your Facebook friends turn out to be Mr. FBI out there. All right, so where are we at in this thing? Okay, so next paragraph. On September 13th, 2016, an individual reportedly intentionally drove his vehicle towards 3 white officers with the police department in Phoenix, Arizona, outside a gas station, striking 2 of them before he was arrested. The subject's social media accounts indicated that he was tied to a BIE group and a Moorish group, and that he was angry over police shootings since at least the killing of Mike Brown in 2014. Consistent with BIE statements on social media, the subject stated the Caucasian needs to be slaughtered like the pigs that they are, right along with the niggas who serve and protect them, according to law enforcement reporting. Once again, who is this individual? How come they're not dropping his name? Who is this mystery individual that drove his car into 3 officers out in Phoenix, Arizona? Who is this person? All right, then we goes on to say on November 21st, 2014, a BIE was arrested and eventually convicted for purchasing explosives the subject intended to use in the Ferguson area upon release of the grand jury verdict for the police officer involved in the shooting death of Mike Brown. He previously discussed a desire to kill the white St. Louis County prosecutor and the white Ferguson police chief who were involved in Brown's case, according to FBI information. Additionally, the subject had ties to a BIE group that had discussed ambushing police. Furthermore, the subject had ties to the sovereign citizen movement, filed paperwork declaring himself an Aboriginal, Indigenous, Free Sovereign Moor, and possessed a Moorish identification card, according to open source reporting. Once again, it's another anonymous black person. You got to always be wary of these so-called anonymous black people, because typically when black people get out there and do some shit, the very first thing they do is run to the media, blast your name all over social media, all over the news. They post all your family and friends information, looking for any goddamn thing they can make. They can find to criminalize you in some way. Remember how they did that little boy that fell into the gorilla pit? How they was talking about his dad got arrested 10 years ago, even though his dad arrest 10 years ago had shit to do with it, and his dad wasn't even at the zoo that fucking day. This if they're gonna do that to a child, what makes you think they're not gonna do that same shit to a grown man? Hell, look what they did to Trayvon Martin, goddammit. But all of a sudden we got these mystery black people popping up out of nowhere that are attacking cops in a nation that's so pro cop, especially since Trump got elected. How come they're not dropping names? I'm a little suspect about this. This could be any fucking body, or this can be just completely made up bullshit. All right, where are we at in this thing? It goes on to say perspective. BIEs have historically justified and perpetrated violence against law enforcement, which they perceived as representative of the institutional oppression of African Americans, but had not targeted law enforcement with premeditated violence for nearly 2 decades, leading up to the lethal incidents observed beginning in 2014. So, you mean to tell me they made this whole report talking about you niggas out there listening to all this black empowerment talk or this black extremist talk? Y'all niggas about to go out there and just start causing problems for law enforcement, even though you niggas ain't done shit in over 20 fucking years. Even though it's only been 6 incidents that we can bring to light since 2014, with at least 2 of those instances possibly made up bullshit because we can't supply you niggas no names. Do you guys hear what the hell they're saying here? These people are fucking crazy. But you got all these white folks out there committing all these mass shootings and attacking black people left and right. But, you know, where's the FBI report on these motherfuckers right here? Where the hell was I at in this damn thing? Oh yeah, BIE violence peaked in the 60s and 70s in response to changing socioeconomic attitudes and treatment of blacks during the civil rights movement. BIE groups such as the Black Liberation Army, which was created in the early 70s to take up arms for the liberation and self-determination of black people in the United States, engaged in murders, bank robberies, kidnappings, racketeering, possession of explosives, and weapons smuggling. From 1970 to 1984, the BLA was involved in at least 38 criminal incidents, including 26 armed assaults, 3 assassinations, 4 bombings, and 4 hijackings and hostage takings. Almost half of these attacks took place in predominantly African American neighborhoods and targeted law enforcement officers without regard to their race, according to an open source database. So they got to reach back over 30 damn years ago to try to link some shit from 30 years ago to the present in order to try to give this damn bullshit ass report credibility. They literally had to go back 33 years, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about a group that did some shit 33 years ago to try to tie it into some shit involving 4 incidents and 2 suspect incidents. I can't speak tonight. 2 suspect incidents. Get the hell out of here, man. BIE violence has been rare over the past 20 years. Listen to this. BIE violence has been rare over the past 20 years, and there is sparse evidence of any convergence with SCEs who adhere to Moorish beliefs, who have historically engaged in non-violent fraudulent schemes. These motherfuckers just admitted that violence has been rare over the last 20 years. If it's been rare, why the fuck is this report coming out? All right. Fraudulent schemes, including production of fraudulent personal identification documents such as international motorist certificates, passports, vehicle titles, registrations, birth certificates in support of their claims of sovereignty. In addition, although non-Moorish SCEs have committed lethal violence against law enforcement in the past, this violence has typically occurred in response to encounters with law enforcement. For example, during traffic stops or the issuing of warrants, rather than through premeditated targeted aggression. In addition, not all self-identified Moors are sovereign citizens, and not all sovereign citizen Moors engage in violence against law enforcement or illegal activity. So, man, these jokers are going around here highlighting a bunch of non-lethal, non-violent suspect criminal activities, such as basically forging a bunch of documents is all they're saying, and trying to say forging a bunch of documents is enough to justify the FBI keeping tabs on black people for possibly wanting to commit acts of violence against law enforcement in retaliation to police officers pretty much abusing and killing black people with impunity. Man, when white people want to reach, the motherfuckers get their Stretch Armstrong on something serious. The FBI has previously reported on BIE retaliatory violence against law enforcement in 2 products. This intelligence assessment addresses actual incidents of lethal retaliatory violence. The previous Black Identity Extremism intelligence products discuss calls for potential retaliatory violence, not actual violent incidents. Let me read that again. The previous black identity extremism intelligence products